So I actually had a lot of thoughts while reading this article, and I think they do relate very closely to the CRF position and just, I guess, in relation to how I live my daily life, and it put a lot of things into perspective for me. But so the model on multiple dimensions. One of the first things that I noticed about it when I was describing what the model was that it assumes the distinction between a personal identity and a social identity. And I think this is really important because something that I hold of value to myself may not be something that other people realize about me, or may not be something that they judge me by at first glance. So someone might see me as Indian as one of the first things, or a person I consider myself as a person of color. But so someone might identify me as that. However, I first identify myself as a student. I identify myself as a daughter, and being Indian holds great value to me. Absolutely, I'm very proud of my culture, but this is not something that first comes to my mind when I'm asked to define myself, because I don't believe that it should. I don't believe that should be a distinction between me and the rest of society. Another thing that I really liked about this model was that it just asked students how we define and describe ourselves, and which identities are most important to us. And I think that's really important because, like, it should be what is important to us, not what other people think should be important to us. So, like, maybe my father believes that being a student is what I should define myself as, and maybe I don't. And, that's my decision to make. Another thing I noticed was how it was discussing how structures of privilege and oppression affect the construction of identity and the sense of oneself. Sorry for the noise. But I think this was something that I hadn't really realized before. I didn't realize that this can define the way someone views him or herself. Like, if they've had years of oppression and they've been put down in society, people might not want to define themselves as Native American. They might not want to be associated with that group of people. And in my mind, that's just tragic, People shouldn't be ashamed of who they are or their background or where they come from just because society tells them that it's wrong, or society in the past has declared it to be wrong to be Japanese American. But we're a progressive society, and I think that it's really important for us to be open to different cultures and different values. Okay. Another critique that I have regarding this model is I know that some societies and in some religions, it's very important to define who you are and be strong in your sense of, strong in your sense of belief, and not to waver from who you think you are. That's very important. But I really dislike the concept of that we have to define ourselves. I don't think that this is necessary. And in the article, it was talking about how the woman in her list defined herself as a woman first, as her gender, and then her ethnicity, so black. She was a black woman. But even though this was a personal identity for her, it kind of also showed that the outside social pressure that was being imposed upon her, that she had to define herself this way, and these were her values. And this was a list that was out of a list, and of course it didn't give the whole list, but I dislike how we have to figure out who we are, and we have that social pressure in order to define ourselves. And I dislike that, because I don't want to have to impose labels upon myself. I don't want to have to decide who I am right now. And even though the model, this is one thing I appreciate about it, it accepts that our identities are dynamic in nature, that they change and they're complex and shifting, whatever. I appreciate that, but I also don't like the fact that I do have to put myself in a category. Why can't I just be accepted for who I am and be happy with that? Why can't I be happy with that? Why can't society be happy with that? I guess a question for future class discussion is, what do you believe people notice when they're first putting preliminary judgments upon others? Is it gender and ethnicity? do people see characteristics such as intelligence or humor? What do you believe? I think this is really important in the Sierra, of course, just because it's important that you shouldn't impose your judgments upon others before they get a chance to define themselves in the way that they want. And so you shouldn't believe that someone is a woman just because that's the way she appears. Maybe she doesn't want to define herself that way, and that way you hold out your opinions before they're able to formulate their or justify their own. Consequently, a time that I redefined myself was when I started hanging out with more of my Indian friends and white friends, and I became more immersed into the culture. And this is a little hard for my other friends to understand, kind of because I've never been part of my culture. I didn't really get any resistance. My friends were very happy, and they wanted to try on saris, and they loved Indian music and Indian food. And so that was fun for me, but it was a little dynamic shift in just the way that I had been and the way I had defined myself and seen myself in the past.